Well, I'm in Colorado, our mountain cabin called the Nellie Bly, and it's April, about the 5th. It's about 35 degrees out here, so I'm dressed for the occasion. But I was here about 3, 4, 5 years ago. I lost track of time, and I came up here to recuperate from adrenaline fatigue. A more common phrase is burnout. I got burned out from being in the ministry, working, traveling, all that I did. I amassed about 2 million miles, traveled to several countries, all over America, all 50 states. It just exhausted me. You know, most of that know Little Bear, I traveled with a trunk, 2 trunks in the early days, 70 pounds each. And it had props, guns, everything you can imagine. It goes with historical reenactments from the 1300s to World War II. And carrying those in and out, then books, tapes, videos, everything that I had to sell at my vendor table, primarily by myself because Marilyn was raising the children, homeschooling at home. So I was young. I started at about the age of 35 and just went on with energy galore and doing things as unto the Lord, not realizing that I wasn't keeping a Sabbath day holy. I thought that was just for the Israelites. God says to the Israelites, keep the Sabbath day holy. Little did I realize that even before the Israelites were given that command, God gave it to Adam. The 7th day would be a day of rest. And I thought, well, when you're 30 years old, you know, young and foolish, who needs rest? So I worked 7 days a week for over 35 years with very little rest, going in and out. I would take vacations, but sometimes vacations are exhausting. Not just sitting still before and in the presence of the Lord. So coming up to this very chalet 3 or 4 years ago, completely defeated and drained of all strength. If you haven't had adrenaline fatigue, it is very odd. You don't have the gumption and the go power to do anything. I'm talking about even simple things like Bible reading and going to church. You lose your interest in all those things. Almost religion becomes a burden. And you have to decipher, well, what is religion and what is the relationship that I have with Jesus? And I was going through all of that. I'll never forget. I was shopping in our local supermarket here in Buena Vista, and my wife sent me over to get some bullion or something in that aisle. She was on another aisle. So I walked up there, and I was looking at the bullion, different things, and I just started to cry. I found myself weeping for silly things. Who's going to cry over bullion? But that is the weirdest thing about burnout. You're emotionally spent. Your nerves are raw. You're, I would say, close to depression. I've never had depression. I'm very thankful that I got it then because it taught me to be more compassionate to people that have depression and get it and have bouts of depression. So nothing worked. I would listen to praise music. I could do that much. And I would just sit on the deck overlooking these mountains behind me, the Collegiate Peaks, and meditate upon them. And sometimes not even think too hard, just stare. Kind of like old people do on rocking chairs. You wonder what they're doing. Well, I was just staring with nothing to think about and listening to praise music to get encouraged and to build my spirit up. And in the middle of all this, God spoke a word to my heart. It was so precious to me. But at the same time, it was very grievous. So he took me in my mind to Revelation chapter 2, the church of Ephesus. And he says, I know your works. And so he's speaking to my heart. And he says, I know you've labored for me for over 30 years. And you've got burnout as a result of that labor. But you've forgotten one thing. And then he hit me below the belt. He said, you've left your first love for me. And of course, I was already raw. I was starting to weep. And I go, Lord, you couldn't have said anything more hurtful to me. I would never want to think that I lost my love for you. In fact, all of the ministry I was doing has been because I love you. I've served you in this love for you. How could you say this to me? And then he added that tag that's there in Revelation chapter 2 to the church of Ephesus. He says, go back and do your first works. And I said, Lord, that's double talk. First of all, I'm burned out for doing works. Then you're chiding me for doing the good works. And now you're telling me to go back to do my first works. and like, a sucker, I fell for it. So I said to him, and you would too, Lord, what is that first word or that first work? And he really hit me. He said, you tell me. And he made me stop to think. And I paused and I pondered. And then it hit me like a ton of bricks. I thought of my first years of conversion, even going to the Light and Power House in Westwood, California, my Bible school. And in all those very early years, you know what? I did very little spiritual things. I wasn't a deacon. I wasn't an elder. I wasn't in church functions. I wasn't an usher. I did nothing. I just went to church on Sunday and soaked it all in. And I would read my Bible daily. Do you know why? I was hungering and thirsting for the Lord. And that's what I remembered. And that's what Jesus was telling me. He said, you've left off that love that you had for me. Not because you had to work for me, but I just want that love. And man, he revolutionized my walk. It's been transformed in the last 4 years or so. It's so much simpler. It's not performing for the Lord. It's not doing works for the Lord. I've done those. You're doing them listening. And you understand that work concept if you're motivated by work and you have ADD, adrenaline personalities. But I had forgotten to just simply sit and rest and love Him. It wasn't having to perform. It was simply being in His presence, reading the Scripture, meditating upon Him, and loving Him, and spending time with Him, walking with Him, talking with Him, being with Him. He dominates all in all. And that's the relationship the Lord is asking for you and I to have. Do you have that kind of love relationship with the Lord? Are you measuring your love by what you're doing? We can't measure the love by what we're doing. He does appreciate, and you see many passages of doing things as unto the Lord. But the greatest measurement is how much do you love Him? How do you measure that love? You measure that love by the quality of time that you're spending with Jesus. That's what He wants. Just you and Him in deep union, like a husband and wife. Intimate. He wants intimacy with you, where you would love Him and know Him, desire Him, and communicate with Him, and let Him communicate to your spirit. When you reach that place, you will have a peace that passes all understanding, even now, in the midst of what we are calling in April 2020, the coronavirus. You'll have peace in the middle of chaos because Jesus is your shepherd and you are His sheep and you love Him. I leave you with this word to pause and ponder.